Is China building Russia a new, more sophisticated attack drone? Just what was wrong with the Iranian drones? And why is this bad news for the West? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is a really interesting story, and that is China is developing a new attack drone for Russia, modeled after the Iranian Shahed. Now, we've talked about the fact that authoritarian countries kind of across the world are deepening their ties, kind of using Russia as a central nexus. We've seen Russia collaborating with North Korea, now with China, and already with Iran. So what's fascinating is that the Shahed drone is one of Russia's favorite deep strike weapons. Now, it's not used to target Ukrainian troop formations. Instead, it's used to hit large static targets, for example, a power plant. And while many of the Shaheds are shot down, Russia will oftentimes launch dozens at a time, overwhelming Ukrainian air defenses. Now, what's fascinating is that at least according to one source, in 2023, Russia and China negotiated for the right to copy the Iranian Shahed drone. And we've seen the Shaheds, at first they were ordered wholesale from Iran. Russia wrote a check, Iran sent some drones. Then it became a little more collaborative it appeared like Russia was exchanging technology, sophisticated missile tech to Iran that worked its way to people like the Houthi rebels. Then you started to see Russia manufacture Shaheds themselves, producing licensed copies in their own factories. But even that is just too expensive, right? Russia's a raw materials producer, not an industrial power. So the cheapest option is actually going to be for China to make their own wish version of a Shahed, right? If you've ordered anything from Amazon, you know that the Chinese-made copies are generally a little inferior, but China themselves actually probably see an advantage in doing this. Right? Now, first off, there's a little bit of a hiccup for old China, and that is that these drones may cross the line and be considered lethal assistance. Chinese officials have skirted the line of Western sanctions, which say that simply you can't sell weapons to Russia. But China is, they've played fast and loose. They've actually ended up exporting a large number of what are called dual-use technologies. These are pieces of equipment that can be used to manufacture either a weapon or a civilian application. A good example would be a communications dish to talk to satellites. This is something that you can use for cell phones or to monitor maritime traffic, right? But it can also be used to talk to a spy satellite or to navigate a weapon system. Again, the GPS satellite, it doesn't know if it's navigating a car to a Starbucks or a missile to Starbucks. And so those kind of dual-use technologies are really China's sweet spot. Sometimes they even appeared to be selling parts kits, so to speak. They would say, listen, we can't sell you an attack drone, but what we can sell you is a camera drone and a couple of brackets and some software that tells a piece of equipment where to drop a missile. And if Russia wants to stick those two together and turn them into an attack drone, that's on Russia, right? So this is a really common scheme that we see for the Chinese. But here's the thing. Once the cat's out of the bag that China's been doing this and the West doesn't do anything, and the West can't do anything. Because remember, the West is having an inflation crisis. And when you have an inflation crisis, the last thing you want to do is take the person who makes cheap goods and sanction them. So imagine if as much inflation as we've had now, if you were to sit there and cut off Chinese manufacturing capabilities, the cheapest of the cheap, right? You would sit there and go, okay, new cars are expensive at baseline. How much more expensive are they going to look when you have every part that's made in China, every screen, every tire, every chip gets forced to be made in a country where it's more expensive, right? It's going to push inflation even higher. And so China, I think, is starting to realize. They said, listen, there's a good chance that the West won't sanction us meaningfully. especially if we play this kind of fast and loose game where they send fully built drones, but currently they're sending drone kits that can be converted easily into attack drones, like we talked about. U.S. said they don't believe China's sending lethal aid to Russia, but other countries can interpret it differently, right? And the reason I think that, China is developing its own in-house kamikaze strike drone called the Sunflower 200, which looks supposedly a lot like an Iranian Shahed 136. And let's see if I can find a Sunflower 200 drone here, and we'll take a look, and I'll talk about why this is. Oh, here we go. Boom, Defense Express. Here is the Sunflower 200. Looks, well, yeah, a lot like an improved Shahed. You can imagine, though, this is a Shahed. Never mind. Right, there you go. There's your Sunflower 200. Yeah, this thing looks exactly like a Shahed. You can see 3 of them are shipped at a time. It's got basically the same range. In fact, they've basically taken the Shahed design and tweaked it a little bit. And here's what I think is so interesting about this, is that the 1,500 kilometers. That's a nice range. Right, so this is something that China wants. But here's the thing. China knows that the future of warfare is these kind of one-way drones. They're so effective, and they're so popular for a reason. And China sits there and goes, listen, we really want the capacity to build them. Because, as you guys know, yeah, there's the first wave of drones, but as Russia's found out, it's not about the drones you have at the start of the war. It's about the drones you can manufacture and keep manufacturing as the war goes on. And so China's sitting there and going, well, listen, what if we got somebody to pay us to create the infrastructure to build these drones, right? So that when we use them against Taiwan, we already have the factories, we already have the people, and our drones are combat tested against Western air defenses. They'd say that's worth a lot of money to us, especially, again, when it's free. So Russia, and so there's naturally a partnership here. China goes, listen, Russia, why don't you order some of our cheaper Shaheds? You're buying them from the Iranians. It's very expensive. The Iranians also don't have good manufacturing capacity. Why don't you buy our Sunflower 300s or Sunflower 200s? And Russia goes, sure, how many can you make? And China's going to go, well, we can only make a little bit now. But once we get that order, once you get that purchase order, we'll expand the factories, we'll improve the supply chains, and we'll be sending you guys hundreds, even thousands of these drones every single month. And for China, they sit there and go, listen, in 2 years, we are going to be sending these drones to Russia from this factory, but at the flick of a switch, we can be the ones buying these drones. It can be the Chinese, the PRC, or the PLA buying in these drones and sending them not into Ukraine, but into Taipei. And even better, maybe the Sunflower 300 is going to take all the lessons that they learn from using them in Ukraine and refine them, make them even better able to defeat or overwhelm Western air defenses, better at evading radar, better at target lock and identification, better about navigating terrain. Really, there's so much potential for a Chinese weapon system. And the Ukrainians know this. And before we talk about why the Ukrainians are so fixated on countering the Shahed threat, I want to mention that if you're looking to counter your own challenges, you don't need to go to Xi Jinping and buy a new weapon system. Instead, just get some Strike Gum. Strike Gum has 90 milligrams of caffeine in every single piece. It has no sugar and 100 milligrams of alpha GPC. It's veteran owned, obviously, owned by this veteran, and made in the USA. But best of all, it's 4th of July, baby. We're celebrating freedom, okay? Freedom, I don't know, freedom from fatigue. I don't know. 4th of July copy is always weird. But the point is, we're having a 4th of July sale. And just like America is here to extend its freedom across the globe, we are extending the sale worldwide. 20% off. All orders over $25. That's it. There's no code. The codes automatically apply to checkout. You don't even have to worry about it. Just go into strikegum.com. You can't get it on Amazon. Strikegum.com. All orders over $25, get 20% off. And conveniently, that's exactly one 5-pack. So you order a 5-pack, you get your 20% discount. You get 25 total pieces of Strike Gum, the equivalent of 25 energy drinks, for literally like, well, that's like less than $20, right? So you can't win. Sorry, it's just a smidge over $20. So that's it. So check us out, strikegum.com, especially if you're overseas. This is the time. We don't do that many overseas discounts. This is an experiment. We may make a lot of money or we may lose a ton of money shipping to you guys. But take advantage of our naivete, right? Order some gum. And if you want to do us a solid, you can leave us a review either on Strike Gum or at Amazon. That helps. Okay. So Ukraine is fully aware that the Shaheeds are a problem. In fact, Ukrainian forces struck an ammo depot at a Russian military base in Crimea, but supposedly this ammo depot was actually housing Shaheeds. Ukrainian forces, right, according to a Ukrainian Air Force general, struck the Shaheeds here 2 days ago, right? And a Russian source attributed it to a Ukrainian cruise missile strike against the warehouse. And it was near Sevastopol. They think that it was actually 6 Storm Shadow missiles, and that one of the missiles actually made it to their target, striking the 758th Black Sea Fleet's logistics center. Russian air defense systems, again, activated, but were not totally successful. And this is basically an example of how these kind of attack runs work, right? There's an expectation that 5 out of 6, or in some cases 9 out of 10, are taken out by air defenses. But when they go together in a flight, the air defenses have a really hard time hitting them all. And the result is that you get one hit. And against something like an ammunition depot, all you need is one hit. The rest of the ammunition does your job for you. And again, what I love is the fact that head of the occupation government said that Russian forces shot down 5 unspecified air targets near the area, and that small fires had been started. Notice there's the key piece of information missing. You shot down 5 targets. How many targets were there in total? It's that 6th one that gets you. And then he added 5 unrelated small fires started. Didn't mention that small fires tend to cook off ammunition. So the Ukrainians know the Shaheeds are a real threat, and that if China ends up manufacturing these Shaheeds, it's going to be a real problem for the Ukrainians. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. A huge thank you to the Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News, including Glenn Reynolds, Beatrice Wallman, Randy Jones, Mark DeBacker, Solidus Frost, badass name, Robin Guo, and Matthew Jug. And of course, thanks to the Lieutenant tier members. Could not do it without you guys. You guys really are the ones who carry the whole site forward. So thank you guys for supporting me. Be sure to check us out, combatvetnews.com. And of course, subscribe to the channel and like the video. See you guys.